I dislike more than a buyer that does not read what you provide to them and then asks the same stupid question 5 times in a row. It's like, did you not read the packet? Did you not even take the time to go through the information? How much of this did you not absorb? So later on, when I'm talking about certain topics, I have to wonder, did you even do your homework? Did you even do your initial analysis? There's no point going forward if you don't do that, correct? Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Steps to Sold podcast. Today, we're talking about a new topic, and this is for buyers and sellers. How to begin analyzing a business for sale. And we're going to start mostly from the buyer's perspective today, a step-by-step guide from when you first inquire to the LOI phase. We're not going to cover due diligence, but we're going to cover how to know a deal is worth pursuing, how to start the analytical process, and for sellers, what you need to have prepared for your team and yourself to allow this process to flourish. Because this is where 90% of deals are going to either jump to the right direction or veer off the road and never occur. And this is the most probably underrated step that we see from different groups, different deals. Good buyers master this process and find the right deal. Buyers that don't do this and sellers that don't help their broker or team prepare for this, you're going to lose 95% of your prospects right here. And it's funny how often it's overlooked, it's undervalued, and we're going to change that today, Chris, aren't we?
We are. We're going to change it one by one.
That's right. So if you're a buyer now, you decide you want to go about the journey, you start looking, you go to any business for sale side, you reach out to brokers, whether it's through email, call, you've started the process. Now the question is, what's going to happen? We're going to give you that clear roadmap today, from the first inquiry you send to right when you're about to write your LOI. And we're going to give you the steps, things to look for. So I've got some infographics on the screen as well. If you're listening on Spotify, go check out our YouTube page. You can see the graphics. You can see some of the examples we're going to show today of what you can expect to receive from a broker or an advisor, and other pieces of information that will help tie all this together visually, because it's a little hard to explain the nitty-gritty just on audio. So bear with us if you're listening. Go check out the podcast on YouTube and get a little snapshot of all that as well. So just forewarning there. But first off, Chris, let's talk about the very first step, which is what and how should buyers initiate contact with their broker or a seller. I think we've talked about this previously with George Welmer on the podcast about how buyers should set themselves up, but let's just give a quick little review here. One, if you're going to reach out, have a personal message to send with your inquiry or your email. A lot of sites, you go click on like Biz by Sell, for example, you click on to say, I inquire, I want more information. If you just put, I want more information, or I just want the SIM, you're not showing you're serious. Yes, I know you know the SIM, that's great, but there should be a little something. Hey, I'm so-and-so, I've got X experience. A very quick one-paragraph response goes a lot longer, or a crafted email, than just send me information. Anybody can say, send me information. It's a default answer in the actual inquiry tab that you use. I find, Chris, ones that make a little more personal touch tend to show a little more thought and have actually gone through this process. What do you think?
Yeah, a first inquiry, it often sets the tone for the entire relationship, right? It's how we get started. So if you're inquiring and you're using your Gmail account, yeah, you definitely should tell the broker who you are, what you're with. You don't need to give them your life story in the little section that they give you. But if you're inquiring from your domain and you guys are in manufacturing and you're inquiring about another manufacturer, we as brokers, we're going to see that. We're going to do the research. We'll find it. You don't need to give us a whole lot. But if you're generic Yahoo Gmail account and I can't find you online, we are off to a slow start, because I'll send you the NDA, but then I've got to have a lot more information if this is a big business. If it's small business, maybe we can talk about it something different. But if it's $5 million, $7 million, and I don't know who you are and I can't find you online, I'm going to need a lot more financial qualification from you. So, I've noticed that when buyers introduce themselves with a short background, whether it's a time frame of what they're looking to do and how soon they're looking to do it, the seller and the broker, we can both respond with a lot more clarity and kind of be more open about this process right from the start. It invites the acceptance of better information, better communication. It also positions the buyer, the person inquiring, as someone who's prepared. They've been through this. They understand the process. And, in my experience, those early introductions often lead to much quicker access to information. Even when I'm inquiring about a business, I tell them, hey, what I'm doing, what I'm looking for. I always disclose I'm a business broker. I'm not looking to co-broker. I'm actually looking to
Hmm.
inquire on this, because the last thing I want to do is set somebody up and they find out online I'm a broker and they think, oh, he didn't tell us that up front.
Hmm.
So the way you inquire sets the stage for how things are going to progress.
That's right. And especially if you're prospecting yourself directly to, say, a seller, that little extra effort and thought is going to stand out in your email too. We all get junk emails. We all get prospecting emails. When it sounds like it was personally written and you took the time, it shows you put thought into the process. And we all want someone who's put thought into the process, who, especially as an owner or someone investing their time helping someone sell a company, that this is something you really want to do. You weren't up at 1 o'clock in the morning going through biz buy sell daydreaming or wasting time at night. We see those emails. We see when they come in. That's also a red flag too. Doesn't mean if you see something, don't inquire, but just take it with a grain of salt. If I see somebody send 5 inquiries in between the hours of 1 and 3 in the morning, that's a little odd. Let's be honest, especially for massive deals. Now, if you're on the other side of the world, whatever, but we're not going to get technical into situations. But yes, how you set yourself up, you said it correctly, Chris, can dictate the flow of the deal a lot quicker. And like I said at the intro, so many parts of the deal as stall here early on because of just other issues. And we're about to dive into that NDA process, as you brought up. That's coming no matter what. If you want proprietary information besides the blind profile, you're going to have to sign an NDA. So let's dive in real quick there. Brokers are going to ask for that. Any qualified broker is going to ask you to sign an NDA and have some kind of financial capacity disclosed, whether it's a pre-qual letter, liquid funds available. They're not asking for your bank account. We've said that. We're not going to go too deep into that again. But you need to have that information prepared, or at least be able to present something to show capacity to perform. That is so important. And you mentioned in your intro, you give some background, experience, timeline, industry fits. That shows the broker and the owner that you know exactly what you're looking for. You've got a carved out niche. And please don't say anything of $1 million EBITDA. That's not true. You're not going to buy $1 million EBITDA restaurant if you want to be in manufacturing. Let's just be realistic. Give some actual thought and clarity and narrow it down a little bit. You can say you're open to suggestions, but give some actual defined guidelines. That's going to help you stand out. Ones that don't do that, they fall a little behind in the pecking order. It just is what it is. So why these tips matter? One, if you haven't figured out by now as a buyer, sellers want their confidentiality protected. I would not hand over my tax returns to anybody that sends me an email from a site saying, I want to know more. I know you wouldn't, Chris. Two, it's about showing respect for the process and respect for what you're about to enter into. If you're about to look into a $2, $3, $4, $5, $6, $10 million deal, there's an amount of etiquette that goes into that. Just like trying to find someone you want to date in real life or marry. You want to show the right steps, show good intention. And us being the quote unquote fatherly figure of the deal, we're going to make sure you're there respectful. You're going to come in with the right intentions. Otherwise, like I said earlier, you're going to get shoved down the line. It sets the tone. And that is, as you said earlier, Chris, is so important. It gives credence and faith to the deal. And for those of you listening, we talk about transferability all the time. Good faith leads to better transferability and better intentions and respect between broker, buyer, owner, the whole team, advisors, accountants, you name it, lenders. Transparency and good upfront communication does matter. So, Chris, let's dive into probably the most important part, I think, of this process. The initial package you're going to receive and what you should ask for and what you should expect, because that can be two very different things. Let's talk about what you should expect from a qualified broker in situation. First thing, if you've completed the NDA and you've completed financial form, there's two things that happen. Sometimes you get a call from the broker just to verify a couple things or have a couple questions if you didn't give enough information like we talked about. Or two, if you filled it out, everything looks great, you're going to get the SIM, right? You're going to get that first initial presentation package of what is the breakout of what the name of the business is, some financial recast. I'll let you dive in a little bit on that while I get the screen changed for some of the information we're going to share.
Yeah. Happy to talk about the initial package. It's going to be designed to give the buyer, the person inquiring, a high-level snapshot. It's going to be just enough for them to evaluate, does this align with your goals? What I help buyers most often do is they're looking for a clean story. This is what they want to see in that initial package. They want to see steady revenue, clear owner role. They want to get a sense of how the business operates on a day-to-day basis without having to read a full novel. They want a quick snapshot of that. That maybe it doesn't align with their goals. They can move on to the next one. Broker and seller can move on to the next,
Mm-hmm.
opportunity at next buyer. They're looking to understand whether it fits their lifestyle and their experience. And that can mean difference whether they're an individual or they're, a private equity firm. Obviously, they're going to come at it with different lenses, different optics of what they're looking for. But what I would tell you this is I've seen buyers save significant time simply
Yes.
by looking at alignment first. Don't even dive into the numbers. Look for the things that align, have some goals that you're looking for. And if the business you're looking at, there's got to be a hard line in the sand at some point where you
Mm-hmm.
say, nope, that's not for me. I'm not going to waste any more time on this deal. Do that before you dive in any deeper and you're starting to ask all these questions just because you know how to ask questions and you want to kind of, spin your wheels a little bit.
Yeah, so when you say alignment, let's talk about that. I'm assuming you're talking about, does this business have a manager if I want to be a semi-absentee owner?
Yeah.
Does this business have contractual revenue? Is that correct? Is that where you're going?
Well, alignment is your goals, right? My goals are different than your goals. And so you need to
Mm-hmm.
align with your goals. If your goals are to be completely absentee and you look at this business and right from the top in the broker's summary, you see that this business owner works 60 hours a week. He's the knowledge base. He knows all the business. That is not aligned. You're not going to come in and change that business. I guess you can if you want to, but if that's the business you're looking for is somebody who's either absentee, semi-absentee, and you're trying to make it fully absentee, then
Mm-hmm.
don't find a business with 60 hours and keep diving in and keep asking questions about it just because you like the
Yes,
revenue, you like the cash flow. It's not going to work out.
I agree. So now that you've got the NDA, you've got the SIM, let me share what looks like a recast, because a recast is one of the main key indicators early on of, like you said, how to find an alignment. Are the numbers making sense to you? And for buyers out there, if you're looking for the right business, don't be just cash flow chasing, like Chris said, find alignment to your goals. But as you look here, a lot of sims will have a recast similar to what you can see here. The last couple of years' financials dictating if it's a tax return, a P&L, or just a generated sheet, what the data source is. And it's going to show you a quick breakdown of revenues, officer salaries, rents, any specific add backs. And we'll cover what EBITDA and SDE are later on in the podcast with some screenshots. So don't worry about looking at that now and getting confused. We'll discuss that in a little bit deeper detail. But you can see how an initial recast is going to look to show you how did the broker come to the cash flow number and how then was the business priced, correct, Chris? Because everybody's always going to ask, is the cash flow real? And is this priced appropriately, too little, or too high, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And you can start by, it's going right to left there, but you can see on this one, the revenue 4 years ago was roughly $4 million and it's grown to 6.5 million.
Mm-hmm.
That's great growth for a business. That shows over
Yes.
50% growth. Then you can come down into cost of goods. And I'm looking at this one. This is mine, but you can see cost of goods was, you can look at the numbers, but really
It
look at
was
that
high,
percent. Yeah, look at that percentage point beside it, 71.8% for cost
down
of
to
goods in
60.
2021. And now if it's 60%, if that's accurate and that's true, the business owner has done a really good job of,
Mm-hmm.
finding economies of scale, getting his cost of goods lowered. And then
Right to that
we've just
bottom
got,
line.
yeah, exactly. And so you can see that too. 18.3% was his SDE, seller's discretionary earnings. Like you
Mm-hmm.
said, we'll talk about that and go into further detail on what that is. But yeah, he's growing his SDE margin as well. It's grown to 25.6. So he's doing that primarily by lowering the cost of goods. But you want to notice some early things like this when you're
That's
reviewing the
right.
package.
And as SDE online, you'll typically see a revenue and asking price what the SDE or EBITDA is. The nice thing with the recast, it shows you where those components are compiled and how they're itemized out for you to analyze. Like, is this guy paying himself a massive salary? Is this all based on depreciation or interest add backs? And we'll discuss that a little later. But it gives you a snapshot. And as a buyer, that gives you some more confidence in what's going on internally in the business. So again, does this make alignment? Does this make sense for me? And that's important to understand. The next thing to expect too as a buyer is you're probably going to get an email back from the broker once the SIM is sent. Our system automatically will release it or send it to you based on your qualifications. And it's going to ask you a couple quick questions, right, Chris? Hey, what's your timeline looking like? Are you pre-qualified with a lender? If not, do you need help with that? What is your initial thoughts or plans? Why are we asking those questions? And as a buyer, why you need to have those answers ready. One, are you a right fit for this business? 2, have you done your homework and diligence? And 3, if you didn't give us any of that information in the initial email or inquiry, which you don't have to do, but we're going to then follow up those questions. Why? We're going to find out what the timeline for you looks like for this deal. Because let's be honest, if you can state, hey, I'm a cash buyer, I can close in 90 days post diligence. Wow. If it's, hey, I need to go to SB, I haven't even started the process yet. That's 3 to 6 months, right, Chris? So that does make a difference for the owner if there are competing buyers, what their timelines and offer structure and deal structure might look like to affect the total consideration, correct?
Yeah, and I want to back up and say something on the NDA, and then I'm going to come back to your point. I have a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people when I don't have a big financial qualification up front. I will ask it later if I can't find much information on you.
Mm-hmm.
But everything you fill out for the broker, I know that the buyers, especially the ones who inquire about a lot of businesses, they probably get sick of brokers kind of being the roadblock and they just don't want to fill
In
out.
their eyes.
You have to understand when you fill out something, there's a chance or it's probably likely that we have to run that by our client. So
Mm-hmm.
when it says how much capital do you have to invest, or we're asking about your final financial qualifications, and you put zero or you put it depends on the deal, something like that, we've got to show that to our clients.
Red
And do you
flag.
think they're going to be likely to want to move forward with you if you're not willing to kind of give them something of where your qualifications lie?
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to come back to that point and then go to as far as the financials, what we're talking about. That is going to be the backbone of any
Mm-hmm.
analysis, right? That's what people dive into first. They may read about the business, but eventually they want to see those financials pretty quickly in their review of the business.
You're right. And sometimes I think they overfocus on the financials. I think you made a great point earlier. Look for alignment. Look at deal structure. Look at company structure. Look at all the parts of the sim that show you different pieces of element, like the company flow chart, how things work. Is that going to work with how you've managed people prior, and how many employees are, how many key employees are there? And I think people too often want to jump right to tax returns and P&Ls. Nothing I think is worse for a buyer to do than to send me an email saying, send the P&Ls right now. You don't even understand how this company functions, but you want to dive into the P&Ls with no understanding why the money is coming in, who's controlling the decision-making process, how it's functioning. I think that's a big mistake. So what not to expect to get right away? Let's cover this. 1, P&Ls and tax returns. The SIM's going to give you a base understanding, or at least some presentation packet will. If all you care about is P&Ls and tax returns, I'll be honest, 99% of buyers I deal with that do that never work out. Let's just be honest. They don't work out. So if that's your plan out there, take a step back, reevaluate, take some hints today. 2, you're not going to get a full customer vendor list and key employee names and sensitive data. You're not. This is the discovery phase. Remember, we're looking for alignment. Does this make sense? You should be too. This is a mutual beneficial situation here. The owner has to know you're coming with the right intentions, and you have to come in with the right presentation and say, can we make this fit? You don't need to know key vendors right now. You don't. And honestly, if there is a customer concentration issue, good brokers will highlight that on the sim saying customer A makes up 25% or customer B makes up 40%. So you'll know up front in the sim there's a concentration issue there. So you can address that very early on in discussions. And if you don't bring it up and you look at the sim, then bring it up later, what that tells the broker and sellers, you didn't read the presentation, which is even worse because now you're just skipping through stuff. That's a massive mistake. Reading the presentation and having a conversation about it shows the broker and other advisors you're taking this seriously and you've digested the information we gave you. Because if you're not going to digest it, Chris, nothing I dislike more than a buyer that does not read what you provide to them and then asks the same stupid question 5 times in a row. It's like, did you not read the packet? Did you not even take the time to go through the information? How much of this did you not absorb? So later on when I'm talking about certain topics, I have to wonder, did you even do your homework? Did you even do your initial analysis? There's no point going forward if you don't do that, correct?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely
Sorry.
right. But buyers who approach the numbers kind of, yeah, you want to look at them first. You want to see what they are, but approach them with curiosity. Make sure that you read
That's
that
right.
sim, read the package, and find out what's making it tick. Then come back to the numbers, and now you're looking at the numbers rather than pressure of why aren't they better or why aren't they doing
Mm-hmm.
growing 20% year over year. You kind of got an understanding of how this business is running. You've seen the hierarchy. Hopefully, if the broker did a good job of kind of outlaying the workflow,
And if it's
and
there
now
to be
you can go
seen
back to
too.
those numbers, yeah, and now you can look at those numbers, and you can probably start having some ideas of what could I do to make this better? You're not
Mm-hmm.
quite there yet. You don't need to be having those thoughts too soon,
But
but
it's okay
if
to
you're
have them.
Yeah, I'm curious. I'm always looking at a company like, if I bought this, what could I do
Hmm.
to improve it? What could I do to scale it or grow economies of scale?
Potential.
Yeah, I'm not always looking at the numbers like, why aren't they growing? Sometimes I like when a company's not growing because then I know, hey, maybe I can come in and actually do something. So
Hmm.
that's a kind of a different way to look at numbers when you do get them.
You're exactly correct. And for buyers, understanding that mental process, I think will help you decipher your deals quicker and more efficiently and feel better. And mind you, we have no problems answering questions. I think buyers sometimes get that confused with resistance. We're happy to answer questions. But like anything, if you're not going to do your homework, then ask a question that makes absolutely no sense based on what we gave you, that can be a bit of a disqualifier. And it shows you as somebody who's not bothered to do even basic stuff correctly. How are you going to get through financing a transaction? How are you going to manage getting your information together? It doesn't mean you won't be able to, but it casts a little bit of doubt. So for your sake, this is a place to be a curious person, like Chris said. Think about some strategy, think about understanding, and use that curiosity to ask proper questions. And if you're not 100% sure, it's okay to ask. To say, look, I don't understand this. Please help me understand. We're going to walk you through it. But that will set you apart and also show your true intention that you're taking this serious. Again, taking it serious. This is not window shopping. This is not looking for the perfect SDE recast sheet and you're just going to buy the company. You need to understand the company. If you understand the heartbeat of what makes it run and why it's running, then the numbers will make more sense. Then you can ask more particular and proprietary questions in the next phases that will help you prepare to make an LOI down the road that we're going to get to. So let's talk about probably the next important step. You've got the understanding, you've got the basis, you've got the operational understanding, you've looked at the sim, you've had a call with the broker, right? We've probably had discussions. Next steps, you may do a buy-sell in-person meeting with the seller or via distance, maybe a Zoom call, maybe some kind of meeting. So you go through that. We'll cover that a little bit later. But the next thing is going to be evaluating the financials, diving into the real financials and getting a better understanding of what's going on and what you should expect, right, Chris? One, P&Ls, tax returns, previous 3 years, year to date, and any kind of asset or specific balance sheets that you need to understand where at in the timeline of the deal that you're inquiring, which is end of the year, beginning of the year, etc. But let's talk about probably the most discussed thing online is, do you use EBITDA or do you use SDE, right, Chris? And when do they apply and how do they apply differently? I'll let you start with why people use SDE and then we'll kind of parlay off that.
Yeah, you got all kinds of buyers using all kinds of different kind of math, I would call it, is EBITDA. You know, that's the easiest one to kind of find. You can look at the bottom
Mm-hmm.
line on the tax return. You're adding in three things, maybe four things: interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization, and you got your EBITDA. That's as simple as can be. Does it mean a whole lot? Some people say no. I see a lot of arguments online that EBITDA is trash and you can't ever use it. It's a tool. At the end of the day, it's a tool. It's a measurement tool, and that's all it should be used for. Whether you think it's the end all be all to buying companies, that's for each person to decide. The only thing that we're doing with EBITDA to get to SDE is adding typically the owner's salary and any,
Mm-hmm.
let's call them discretionary expenses that they use through the business, whether it's some travel,
Yes,
some personal fuel, some insurance. We all see that. That's going to get you to the SDE number. You know, so
that's right.
one thing that when you're looking at the financials that I've always found helpful is to start trying to identify some trends. What are the year over year revenues? What are the margins? What's that trend look like? That's the most important story when looking at the financials. It's not taking 1 year and saying what is it. It's saying, hey, are there leaps? Are there big declines? What's going on here? You know, buyers who approach these numbers and look for those trends, they're going to understand the business a lot quicker than the guy who's looking at the trailing 12 months and he's just focused on what that was and thinking that's going to
Mm-hmm.
be the future of the business. I don't mind when buyers ask for 10 years of revenue. I don't want to give you 10 years of tax returns, but if you ask for 10 years of revenue, it may be quite a lift to actually get that information from my client, from the seller, but it does show that trend of what's going on here. What happened in
Yes.
2008 when the recession hit? What happened to them? That'll show you how they weather economic storms. So that's very
Yes,
important when you're analyzing the financials early on.
you're correct. And if, for example, here I'll show my screen again real quick to everybody out there. When you're looking at SDE, like you said, you take your net operating income, your net income, interest, depreciation, owner salary. But the key here is verifiable add backs. Those are the add backs that sometimes are probably the most contested thing, an item in all of business valuations, correct, Chris? I mean, always. They're not all equal, and they should be verified. If they can't be verified, don't count them. Like, hey, I take X amount of cash that disappears. Not verifiable. Don't add it back. Maybe you had a one-time issue. Maybe a hurricane came through and did massive damage to the business one time. You can, in some cases, add that back. Now, if you're on a business based on the beach and you get hit year after year, probably part of operating costs. But say you're in Shreveport, Louisiana, and a hurricane somehow made it up to Shreveport and damaged your stuff, yes, you might be able to consider that a one-time add back. Maybe a one-time legal issue, for example. Someone filed a false report against you to defend it. That's not going to happen year after. You can add that back. The key with add backs is, are they legit and are they real? Please, brokers, don't just throw travel, meals, and entertainment in full lump sums into add backs. Buyers, beware of that. And you want to question that. And you want to question every add back with an explanation. If the broker cannot or owner cannot give you an honest explanation, that's a problem. We had one recently where the owner is absentee in a service business and wanted to add back the manager's salary if someone else buys it, runs it, owner-operators. We can cut the salary right away. Let's talk about that, Chris. No, you cannot. And you want to know why I'm going to say no, you can't just wipe it out automatically? You want to take a guess?
Was it the manager's salary or the owner's salary?
The manager's salary.
Oh, yeah. He's got to replace that guy. Somebody's got to do that work.
If I come in day one, buy this restaurant, and cut out the manager who everyone's loyal to, are the workers going to stay?
Yeah.
You can't do it day one. You need training and transition. If the owner's absentee and the manager's been running the business, I need that knowledge base for at least 2 to 3 months to make sure I know what's going on, how things are being properly accounted for. So you can't just automatically add that whole salary back unilaterally. Correct? Yeah. You can't fluff that. You can't just throw something on because you think that's how it should be run. You have to look at it how the business is being run currently. Can you say, yes, there's room for, quote, maybe optimization or increased cash flow for becoming an owner-operator from an absentee? Maybe so. Not always the case. And I hope people out there look at add backs. And here's one, too, I want to state. Do not take add backs seriously that take out employee health insurance and pension plans and want to cut that. That's not an add back. If you come in and cut the employee's benefits day one, they're gone. That's absurd.
You remember that one I had looked at a couple months ago where they wanted to say, hey, these 4 or 5 employees could be cut. We're overstaffed right now. So a buyer can come in and you can easily save. So it was crazy. It was like $500,000. So they were increasing their net income by $500,000 because 4 or 5 employees.
Cut benefits.
Yeah, and then they were going to cut benefits and all this other stuff. And yeah, that's not a good start.
And this is why in deals, so many deals die, because some brokers just throw anything the owner wants as an add back in there and it fluffs his cash flow up. So then the multiple is based on the cash flow in the business. Well, now you have a grossly overpriced business with a grossly overvalued cash flow. So when you get in as a buyer, you go, yuck. I get it. That's why you look at the first initial recast on the sim and you might notice that and say, that doesn't add up right. So can I see, I like the deal, but I have concerns. Let me now please see some P&Ls and tax returns to verify these add backs or at least have discussions about them. And if they don't provide you that, be a little cautious. That should be a red flag, because if you go to lending, the lenders are going to tear that to shreds. Just forewarning, any good lender is going to tear every add back to shreds to verify it, and they will hold it against you in your valuation, which will then hurt what they can do to help you purchase it. But let's talk about the difference between EBITDA and cash flow a little bit when it's applied, Chris. Obviously, SDE is more for owner-operator-based businesses because their owner is going to be heavily involved. That's what I tell people. When you see EBITDA, you're actually buying a company that's got management operations in place. The owner may have a role, but they are not the day-to-day facilitator of all the major key functions. They are in the driver's seat, but they're not doing every single function. So what is EBITDA? I think you said it too, but I'll cover it again with the infographic for those listening. Earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization. Those are the key 5 things, as you can see, that equal EBITDA. That's what bigger deals are going to be based off of. Now, there is adjusted EBITDA. There are times you may see owner salary added back or some other, reconciliations, one-time add backs similar to SDE. But they're probably not going to make a massive change in the overall number, whereas in SDE, the add backs may really greatly increase the cash flow because of a smaller company. So just keep that in mind too as you go out searching. Understand what these metrics are, understand how to apply them, and if you need help, please, please, please get proper consulting advice on what they mean and how they work, because the multiple's based off of this number, SDE or EBITDA. and that sets the value. So if you can't properly determine this number, you can't properly determine what the value of the business you're looking to buy, and that is probably the most important thing. So we talked about add back, talked about recasting. What are the next key questions you think, Chris, a buyer should ask? My first one would be, are the add backs documented? What would be some other questions that you would say after reviewing financials are good to ask the broker and the seller?
Working capital, right? You can go into working capital.
Your favorite topic.
Yeah, I love it. Just had a phone call literally before we jumped on the podcast talking about working capital. And in that case, the gentleman, we gave him a balance sheet, but what's he want to see to calculate working capital? He wants a 12-month rolling balance sheet, which perfectly, that's great. We're getting analysis. We're getting close to a deal on that one. And what does he want to see with that? He wants to see where that accounts receivable balance lies at the end of each month, so he can kind of get an average or get an understanding and perspective of what this AR looks like. He'll also do it on the cash. He'll do it on the accounts payable. So you're going to want to have those things ready. And as a broker and as a seller, you want to make sure that you have that information available. It's cleaned up and it's ready. So that would be probably my top one after P&L, tax returns, have some cost of goods kind of understanding of that, and SDE and all that stuff is going to have that balance sheet. It's not one of the first things that's usually requested. Like you said, everybody wants to look at that P&L, but there's a big story with that balance sheet, and especially a 12-month balance sheet on a bigger business that has, especially if they have large swings, you've got to have that to evaluate the company.
You're exactly right. Look at that, AR net. How quick is it? Net 30, net 60, net 90. Hey, are my products going out? You mentioned the honey manufacturing business, seasonality business. You mentioned working capital. All those things factor into looking at those P&Ls. And it might be why the P&L may look a little skewed, good, bad, or indifferent, because that business may not have received all that AR yet. It may not have received. It may have spent all this time producing these products. Working capital is drained, but the product is now going out to be sold. All these are factors you want to have a discussion with. And the SIM should highlight some of that, but this is the time to get into the nitty-gritty a little bit, because now you can formulate how does this business function. So if I want to put an LOI in place, okay, I understand like you said best, what is my working capital, or subject to making sure it's properly calculated with a defined timeline. Secondly, what am I going to need for my loan? Now, how does this impact my loan if I'm doing an SBA loan? Do I need to get more for the working capital if I need to do a stock sale versus an asset sale? Correct, Chris? What am I looking to receive? Or if I'm doing a stock sale, how should that affect the value? Because I might be receiving $500,000 in AR, but have $1 million in AP. There's accounts payable for those who don't know. So there's a lot of things that matter when looking at that balance sheet. Like you said, we mentioned it about franchising versus non-franchise businesses last week. That balance sheet is the health of the company. This is a time to dive in and ask some serious questions. That will help you formulate what your next steps, and if it's a viable deal for you. Again, we mentioned earlier to sellers on the podcast, this episode specifically, getting your financials ready. This is where having those layers that allow the SIM to set the stage from proper analysis can then be backed up and verified at this stage. Now, granted, it's not full due diligence, but now you've checked off two boxes. The initial inquiry and review was good. The follow-up questions were provided and verified and understood. It's going to make due diligence a hell of a lot easier, right, Chris? And following these steps correctly now prevents you from losing a good buyer too, and losing a potential deal.
Yeah, you got to follow the steps. There's a order that you can change the order a little bit, but you've got to follow steps in the process and
the general timeline.
I think that's what we're kind of, I'll say, preaching today is, as a buyer, you need to understand what a good process is. You can deviate from it to fit your needs and to make sure it aligns with what you're trying to do. But it can't just be firing out emails, waiting for the SIM, and then, shooting off 100 questions that were already in the SIM.
Yes, do not send a due diligence checklist, please, to start. Let's cover that right now. Do not send a due diligence request to start the deal. Having conversation, building that relationship are so important, and that's what we're going to kind of talk about next. When to have the first buyer-seller meeting. Sometimes you'll have it before looking at P&Ls and tax returns, sometimes after, based on, obviously, geography, size of the business. But what should you do? In the first meeting, my advice to you is when you show up, don't dive into the nitty-gritty. This is a time to sit there and get to understand the owner, understand the philosophy, what he's doing, who he is, where he comes from. Those traits and knowledge he shares with you there is going to tell you a lot about how the company was run, how it's set up, the culture. These are going to be key things for you to consider. If this owner is a day-to-day guy who knows everybody on a first-name basis, their wives or kids, everything about every single employee, this is a relationship-driven company. You show up and this guy's like, I'm here 10 hours a week. I know my guys, but I'm not here. That's a different walk-in, different process, different expectations from these workers who may say, hey, if Chris is gone, I don't know if I want to work for somebody else because I love Chris. Chris knows my family, whereas I never see the owner. He's a great guy, but someone else comes as long as my paycheck is met and things don't change too rapidly, I'm comfortable. These are signs you're going to get early on. And honestly, lead you what questions to ask next. Like we keep saying, follow the process. Forewarning in your process, do not have a playbook you cannot deviate from 100%. If your tunnel vision and train tracks do not let you modify a little bit to get this done, you're going to blow a lot of deals. Because I will give a warning here with these meetings. I have buyers that come and say, well, I follow my process and I don't change. Guess what, buddy? You're going to have a lot harder time making your process fit every single unique individual deal out there than being able to be pragmatic and modify as needed at certain steps. And if that's the case, you'll make it. If not, you're going to butt your head against the wall more times than not. Am I right, Chris?
Yeah, you're not wrong. I've had a buyer not too long ago come in. First thing he did is open his notebook and just started peppering this owner who is a relationship kind of guy. This owner wants to tell a good story, that kind of good old boy that we all love to hear a good story from. But he just opened his notebook and started asking financial questions, and the owner wasn't even the financial guy. He didn't know the numbers. He wasn't that person. He was the guy who could go out and sell a $250,000 deal and
make the deal.
Yeah, he can make the deal happen and he can build the relationship. That first meeting is all about perspective, and it's gaining an understanding of the owner's role, the culture of the company, and what the operations look like. What I would tell you is what works well when meeting an owner for the first time is to ask open-ended questions, because what you want to do is you want to get them talking. Don't ask how many hours you work a week. Ask the question, what does your typical work week look like? He's going to start talking and he's going to tell you everything that he thought of this last week, and then he's going to talk about typical weeks, and then it's probably going to grow organically from there. Talk about what do team members, what team members are essential to the operation. Get them talking about that. Get that owner's take on who he feels is a key manager, who is a key employee that you can't do without. These kind of questions, they are going to open meaningful conversations with an owner, much more so than why did your cost of goods go up by 5% last year? That owner couldn't care less right there. He's meeting you for the first time, and that's one of your first questions. You are not setting the stage for a great relationship or to get a deal done that's going to be very effective.
You're not wrong. I would also ask too, why are you selling? What is the real reason why you're selling? That's a great thing to get off the table early on and develop what is the mindset for wanting to get out of this business, because it may tell you, I don't want to do this based on his answer. Also, I think buyers often know to ask but forget to ask is, what would you do to improve this business and why haven't you done it? Like you said, leave it open-ended, but why haven't you done it? Everybody's always got 4 or 5 things they can say as an owner. I would do this and this, but I would always ask, why haven't you done it? Because the owner can't give you that answer. They haven't really thought about it. Or if they can, it tells you maybe there's not as much optimization here as I hoped, and I feel like I'm going to be limited. And that gives you perspective too for your LOI. Okay, if this is a great business that's got room to grow, I might be willing to offer more. But if this owner says he's already limited because he either needs more space to operate or he needs a lot of capital to grow to compete, maybe I'm not the right fit if I have to get financing before I even get in this deal. Like maybe he needs to buy 5 more trucks. Well, if I stretch my money to buy this business at the price it's at now, I can't afford to go buy 5 more trucks to grow organically, right, Chris? That is something that's going to help shape your mindset and shape what this deal means to you. Don't, like you said, don't look at the cost of goods right away. Don't ask the nitty-gritty questions. Please build the picture. Remember, you are building the picture. Time for due diligence is after the LOI to dive into those questions, why some things don't look correct. To ask it right up front, unless it's a massive red flag that needs to be addressed, then yes. Ask the question, hey, why did revenue drop 50% last year? That's a good time to ask that early on. But if it's a very small issue, don't ask it then.
I love your question of asking the owner what they would do if they were 30 years old, how they would grow this business.
That's right.
When you ask that question, you should be recording that answer in your memory, because you are asking a question to a guy who's typically, if it's long established, who's run this business for 20 or 30 years. He's got all the insights in the world of how this business runs, and he's about to tell you what you can do to grow this business day one. The only reason that they haven't done it is usually because they're a little bit older and they don't need to get something else started, or capital. They don't want to go out and borrow half a
Hmm.
million, $1 million, or whatever this idea cost. But that idea they're about to tell you, if they're going to tell you truthfully and honestly, that's usually what can catapult that business to the next level. I've
That's
heard
right.
it time and time again. I hear buyers, they ask that great question. And when the owner speaks, that is the time to capture that information and retain it, because that comes from decades of experience of knowing what works. And they just got to a point in their life where they just couldn't pursue that because it took time and energy and money and all that stuff that you're now coming in with as a buyer. But you need to understand that answer and need to hear it, and you need to retain it for later, because if you do buy this business, that's what you need to start with.
That's right. And understand how that fits your lifestyle. I think you kind of hit around the bush here, but I want to add to that. Owners build the business typically to live and fund their lifestyle at a certain point. And like you said, they hit that age where I don't want to take on a big loan to go grow capital to grow my company. So yes, that's why I've scaled back. But I want to be at home with my grandkids, or I want to be with my kids as they've gotten older. And I make enough money now where I don't have to do too much stress. I have a return that I want. I allow to fund my lifestyle how I want to live it. Those are key indicators. That's telling you what their threshold is for tolerance, but also maybe where the threshold for the company might be as well, indirectly. And as you said, as they give you those answers, record in your memory, take those notes. Those are going to be the key things you're going to use to format your LOI and know where potential with this business is. And also, when you go to, if you go to a lender, where you can add value in your business plan, where it's got potential to keep growing to make a lender more confident. Lenders don't mind lending on businesses that are somewhat capped out, but they're going to hold that against you. Like, hey, this restaurant only has 100 seats. Well, the only way to generate more revenue is either catering, maybe, or increasing prices because you can't add more seats. So the lender's going to know these revenue numbers are kind of capped. So with debt service, there's no room to alter that unless you can dramatically raise prices without hurting your customer base, for lack of a better example. So that kind of leads into our next conversation topic is, the lending or financing factor if you're going to do that. Be prepared, buyers. If you haven't got your financing in order, you need to do that before you get to this point. Preferably is important to do that. Get an SBA pre-qual letter. If you're going to use an SBA loan, which a lot of buyers do, sub $5 million or even a little bit over $5 million deals. Understand what your capital commitment is, what your risk tolerance is, and how this business is going to line up with SBA requirements. And I think we're going to go back to the point we said earlier, Chris. Lenders are going to verify the cash flow in the add backs. And we talked about earlier, you get the SIM, look at the recast. You got some P&L and tax returns, verify those add backs. There's no point going to a lender if you know there's holes in there and you don't have those answers, because they're going to have to be answered later on in the lending underwriting process. And you don't want to waste a bunch of time on something you know the cash flow will not be verifiable because it's going to get shot down, correct?
No, absolutely. That example I gave earlier of the adding back the employees that hadn't been let go yet of $500,000. I
Mm-hmm.
went ahead and took that to a lender to see what they could do. I knew they weren't going to accept that, but of course, yeah, that deal was dead in the water from the
Done.
day it started. I knew it would be, but I wanted to see what they could even get up to, and I went back to the broker on that
Mm-hmm.
deal and told him that, and told him what I could offer based on what debt financing would do. It wasn't even
Mm-hmm.
close. He was looking for 6x, and I'm down here in 3.5x of cash flow. SBA lenders are going to look for strong historical cash flow, no doubt. We,
Yes.
we we know that. But here's the other
Verifiable
thing:
cash flow.
verifiable. Very good. And they're also going to look for a buyer, and this is really recently. This is even more tight. You've got to
Mm-hmm.
have relevant experience. Just like you said with the restaurant,
Yes.
I've got a freight brokerage business right now that's struggling to get financing because the buyer does not have the relevant experience. He's got an MBA from a highly esteemed college in the United
Mm-hmm.
States. He's got
Well
mergers and acquisitions.
capitalized.
Yeah, he's got mergers and acquisition experience from top company in the United States. He's well qualified. He can put down 20%, not just 10%. And they're still not
A lot of
going to
boxes
lend on
checked
this
there.
business. Yeah, they're still not going to lend on this business. He's talked to 7 different lenders, and no one will do the deal because he doesn't have the requirement. You've got to have a qualified individual for this type of business. And we can bring somebody in, but they're too afraid, hey, they could quit tomorrow and then your business is sunk. So you've got to
Mm-hmm.
have, it's not even a licensing issue. It's just an experience issue. There is no
Mm-hmm.
license. It's just experience. But I've seen buyers strengthen their position simply by preparing to go
Yes.
buy the business, making sure in advance you know what you're going into. And that goes back. We keep using this word, but alignment. You've got to align yourself with where you are in your life. You can't just go chasing cash flow and looking at businesses that you can't even acquire because no one's going to finance it because you don't have the right experience. So
That's
that
right.
kind of goes back to, our lending topic here of you've got to align yourself with lenders.
That's right. And a little side note here too: most lenders are going to want at least a bare minimum of a 1.15 debt service coverage ratio, preferably 1.25. So if you know now the cash flow is already shaky, run some basic math on the cash flow and timetable of the amortization schedule based on what the cash flow says in the sim and what the asking price is. And look at that note early on. Do you want to stomach a note that big? Because that's the case, you need to just get out the way right now. Don't bother getting too far along. And maybe we should have mentioned this point earlier in the episode. But I always, when I start looking at deals, I look at, okay, here's the cash flow. Here's the amount they're asking. Let's say, even if you just do their asking price or the asking price you think you would like to pay, put 10% down and run that amortization schedule, right, Chris? Understand what that's going to look like. And that's going to tell you a lot what your leftover cash flow theoretically should be. And you may not like that. This deal may not have enough meat on the bone for you, or you may feel like that's too big a note to swallow regardless if you have faith in it. I've seen some that are $20, $30, $40, $50,000 or more a month. I mean, that's a lot to commit to. So knowing that, understanding that when you go to do a deal, like say with financing, you understand what your debt service is going to be. And too many owners I see here, and I want to make a point to owners listening. Understand, just because you want a price, if it's not obtainable because it cannot be financed, you're probably not going to get it. Or you're going to have to sell or finance a very large portion, which is not the most fun thing to do. So please have perspective here and understand where a buyer's coming from too. Know your risk tolerance and know your debt service respects that you're willing to do. Because if you've got a job and you're quitting your job to buy this business, the SBA is going to factor that in. And do you have enough money from the business to cover the debt service on the business, but also fund your lifestyle? Do you have a house note, car note, kids' education? All these things need to be factored into your decision-making process at this point if they haven't been already. Because an underwriter and a lender is going to run that by you too. So just have perspective there. Now, they're going to want all that. They're going to want your experience. Your resume matters. So you've done all the above, Chris. We've prepared. We've talked to you. You've gotten the sim. You've done some initial tax returns and P&Ls. You've met with the owner. You've talked about financing. I guess the next part is, should you go further? And I think this is the hardest part for so many buyers too, is they've got this dream, they've got a vision, they've done this. Do I make an LOI or an offer? Correct. It is probably the single hardest part for them to mentally pull the trigger. There's a lot of buyers that love to look at everything and look just for red flags, right, Chris? And they find every excuse to kill a deal at this point. Well, what if this happens? What if that happens? I saw it best written the other day. Get into business and run businesses knowing they're not going to have every answer, but have faith they can figure it out. And if you don't have that faith, you're going to die at this point. So you need to have a come to Jesus moment with yourself and say, do I believe I can figure it out? Am I smarter than the average guy, or can I do it? Or can I surround myself with people who can help me do it? And if the answer is no, or you don't have the right background for this business, if something goes wrong, you can't save it, it's good to walk away. If you do, great, let's work towards that LOI. Now you got to factor in everything you've digested, talk to myself or Chris or the broker you're working with and say, how should I best structure this LOI? Because you need to keep three things in mind. One, is the cash flow legit? Two, how will it affect underwriting? And three, what underwriting criteria, if I'm using a loan, need to be applied to this LOI so that it can get through the loan process, correct? I think too often buyers want their perfect deal, their tunnel vision scenario. It's not going to always transfer perfectly to paper to meet financing contingency requirements, correct? And our job is also to prep sellers for that. But too many times, visions of the inroad split here between buyer and seller.
Yeah, I like when an LOI comes in and they're pegging it off numbers that they've seen, and it's got the contingency, just like when you're buying a house. Hey, if the appraisal comes in lower after we get done with the true due diligence and we've been through that process, that we are going to adjust. It leaves that open. Yes, either party can back out at any time. There's most of the LOI is non-binding. There's some paragraphs in there that typically are, as far as confidentiality and all that stuff. But yeah, I like when they do these things, and I like how you said talk to the broker before you write your LOI. I'd say 50% of the time buyers do that. Sometimes I've spoken to the buyer and they've met the seller, but all of a sudden I get an LOI from them without letting me know it was even really coming. And we didn't talk about timelines. We didn't talk about deal structure. asset sale versus stock sale, or they just, I think it's like opening a birthday gift. It's like, surprise. It's like,
So often
hey,
they forget to even tell you what kind of sale it's going to be. It's like, hey,
that's
well,
right.
you haven't thought about all these different factors. Let's take the rail back a little bit and make sure we set this car properly, because this is going to affect everything we do going forward.
I will tell you this, there's been more times than not that I've gotten an LOI as an asset sale and knew in my mind that if they talked to me, we've got to have this as a stock sale. It's got
Mm-hmm.
huge contracts that can't be changed, or it's got recurring customers that are locked in. It's got
Licensing
licensing,
issues.
thank you,
Yes,
medical
thank you.
medical business. But they go ahead and write this LOI, and now we're already restructuring that. It's not a big change, but it's like, yeah, please talk to a broker and get their understanding of how this LOI needs to be written. We're not going to tell you what number to put on there. We're not going to, that's for you to decide what you value the company. But there are certain structural components to every single deal, whether it's timelines or deal structure as far as asset stock sale, that need to be discussed before anything is written on paper.
Yes. Gosh, thank you. And do not make it a one-page LOI. We've said this before. Be in depth. These are the details that are going to guide the deal going forward. And if they're not clear, you're leaving yourself room for speed bumps. And this is when a lot of deals are going to fail. When you get that post LOI with all those speed bumps that weren't defined, and you start hitting them, trying to renavigate, it creates tension and loses transferability and trust and faith in a deal. So again, we're going to highlight all the things we discussed prior lead to this point, forming the LOI and preparing it properly. When you do that, your chances of a deal, if you follow these steps properly, is significantly higher that it's going to get done. And you're going to be happy with it too. Let me make that clear. You're going to be more confident in it. You're not going to feel like you did something and you don't know where the road's going. You're going to have a process and a playbook to execute on this. The LOI will be modified. Every LOI has modifications before it's closed because there are things that will come up in diligence. Maybe a QV finds an error in the accounting. Maybe the financer comes back and says, look, we love the deal, but we need a little more skin in the game or a little different terms to make the underwriting process fit the debt service ratio, whatever it may be. It's important to understand this is why you did your homework, did the right discovery, developed the relationship, asked the right questions, and now you have set yourself in a position to have leverage and to have protections to get this done. And too many buyers I see that are, I'm going to call flakes. Get the sim. Here's the LOI. No. You need to take a step back. Like Chris said, sometimes we get them unsolicited. Like, please, let's start this a little more slowly. Let's talk about this because now we got to present the LOI and the owner's going to be like, well, he didn't think about this. He didn't consider this. Can't believe we didn't discuss this. Like, imagine being an owner and someone throws an offer in your face and you feel like you haven't covered enough terms to understand what you're even agreeing to, yet alone, does he understand what I want? Because it's great that he's giving me something, but if I got to tear it to shreds and send it back, it looks almost offensive, right, Chris? And that starts the deal off on the wrong foot. It just kills momentum for a buyer too.
Worse yet is we present it to our clients, our sellers, and if they do get excited because they see a big number or whatever the number they want, we've got to give them the advice that, hey, we didn't even discuss this. Working capital's not worked out.
A lot of things to change.
Not even, yeah. And so it's almost setting the stage poorly for execution.
Yes, it is. And that's what we want to highlight. We see our favorite words, transferability. Alignment's probably our second favorite word now on the podcast. But you have to create bridges for transferability and alignment to occur. And the LOI is the final part of both armies have marched to the gates. It's time to lay the bridge and let's cross. And if you don't set that up properly, you're going to fail. You are going to fail, or you're going to have such a miserable experience. It's going to taint the sale post-close. And that's what you don't want in a massive transition when you're leveraging your capital, leveraging your future, and taking a big risk. Because buying a business is always a big risk. Now, granted, your experience and capital can help mitigate that, but it's still a financial risk. There's no perfect transfer. There just isn't. There's always an element of risk, correct, Chris? And how you structure the LOI, having done your diligence, having pre-due diligence, as we're going to call it, today, following these steps in process to identify the right deal is going to allow you to be so successful. I keep saying that because I want people listening to buy into that knowledge base. I do not want to get emails from someone who listens to the podcast and skips these steps because what you've told me is you're not taking it seriously. You just got to be a little more professional as a buyer. It will make you look better. It will make lenders have greater faith in you. Sellers have greater faith in you. Brokers have better faith in you. And it will help you get the deal that you want done because you've done your part. Remember, you want to get the deal you want too. Taking steps the right way, like we discussed, and doing it appropriately positions you if something does come up in diligence post-LOI that conversation is going to be so much easier to have. And honestly, both parties are going to be happy to have it because you will both gone through everything to some degree up front. And there's a relationship now built on trust and due diligence and following a process that everyone can hold everybody accountable to get the deal done now.
Yeah, for sure. Buyers who follow a steady, thoughtful process, whether it's inquiry, review, meeting, analysis, financing, the steps of the way, those buyers will make decisions with a lot more confidence if they know they're in their own process, if they're following the steps that it kind of are a professional way of handling things. Because each step it builds on the next one. So if you inquire the right way, the meeting's going to be set, the stage is going to be set for the meeting. The meeting is going to be followed by analysis and due diligence, and you just know where you're at in the process, and you've got confidence moving through it. And when you've got that clear information and good communication, I will tell you this: buying a business becomes it becomes less risky, a lot more predictable. You know what you're doing. You know you follow the steps. You know everything kind of meets your alignment, and that's the goal, right? Clarity first, great decision second. As long as you've got that clarity, you can make great decisions. But if you just hopped in and you threw out an LOI, or you threw 100 due diligence questions before it was time, you don't understand where you are in the process. Neither does the broker, because you've kind of thrown everybody off the game of this is too soon or this is happening too late. We didn't touch on that though. Delay. Don't delay. Don't after you get the sim and you start the process, don't take a month and a half to get back with us. Let us know.
God,
Glad I can make you laugh.
Yeah,
you see it time and time again.
Back in my mind.
Yeah, I get it all the time. The guy pops back up with some questions. The name doesn't even ring a bell. I'm like, who is this? And
where'd you go?
I have to go back and look at the email. Oh, he's responding to an email from August. I guess we're still doing this with him. But I understand things happen in life. I don't mean to be a critic of all buyers.
No, but just put it in perspective.
Yeah, if you're going to drop off the map, I will say that if you're going to drop off the map, you got some things pop up, and this is something that may pop up down the future. Send a quick email, at least like that professional courtesy of saying, "Hey, we've got some things that popped up at work or life or whatever the case may be. I'm going to revisit that in the future." And that way it'll be something I take seriously when you do pop out. Oh, great to see you again. I'm glad you're back and hope everything worked out well with whatever you were dealing with.
That's right. And if you need time to do some more research, tell the broker or seller, hey, look, I'm looking into this. Let me do some homework. I'll get back to you shortly, or give a timeline of definitions and details. And also, too, it's okay to ask financial questions. I know you mentioned the big due diligence checklists up front. Hey, yes, there is time for proper diligence questions post-LOI acceptance. It's okay to ask certain questions, like we said earlier, as you get past the SIM phase and past the review phase of the P&Ls and tax returns. There may be a couple questions due diligence-esque that you need to ask to help formulate the LOI. Don't be afraid to ask those questions. Just understand asking for a full diligence list pre-LOI is going to be frowned upon, and it's probably going to set you back, like Chris said. Especially when you go dark after getting it, and it takes you 2 months or a month to get back with questions like, all right, you didn't even look at the stuff probably, or you just killed some time hoping to stall. So final takeaways, it's a process. It's not an event. It takes time. You're looking for financial clarity, operational understanding, and to verify some information up front. Understand your financing contingencies. Understand how it affects your deal structure. And most of all, you're trying to eliminate as many surprises before the LOI and diligence in this timeline by doing some homework, getting a better understanding, and having a formulated understanding of the business. Because mind you, if you don't know, if you go to a loan, whether it's SBA conventional, they're going to want a business plan from you. So if you don't understand how the business functions, how can you write the business plan during underwriting? You're going to need to have that information and that greater understanding and base of what you're purchasing and how it's going to work for you. So as a buyer, take all this to heart. As a seller, expect these questions and timelines, understand how they're going to affect the value of your company, and why, as on previous episodes we've said, if you prep the right information, this phase becomes a lot smoother, a lot quicker, a lot cleaner, thus leading to a better result for all parties. And that's what we're going to find. I can make my final point on today. It's about eliminating roadblocks and road bumps and diversions. Everything is a process. When it combines beautifully together, it's amazing how well transactions can occur, and all parties are so excited. Right, Chris?
Yeah, for sure. And what I would say is make sure that you're taking time for each step of the process. I know sometimes you feel...
Don't rush.
Yeah, I think buyers kind of get into a deal and they maybe have an experience with something else they purchased in their life, whether it's a home and they lost out on or something like that. I can almost guarantee you, you're not going to miss out on acquiring a business if you follow the right steps with a good timeline.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason to rush any step in the process. But at the same regard, if you delay, you may miss out. If you wait 2, 3 months, then yeah, that may cause. But taking the steps and setting up the stage to meet the seller at the right time and having that call and then sending your due diligence questions at the right time, you're not going to miss out on a business acquisition opportunity. Most likely, I'll throw that caveat in there, if you follow the right steps in the right order.
Well, to add to that too, Chris, a question we should maybe propose to people in the early phase after the sim is, are there other interested parties looking at this business? And ask the question honestly. We can't tell you what they're offering, but say, hey, is there anybody really interested? Or is it a strategic individual buyer? You can ask stuff like that to get a ballpark. Is there competition for this listing right now? Or do I kind of have the floor to myself and I can maybe be a tad slower in a good way? And it's okay to ask, hey, if there's 3 people looking at it, I need to move quickly and maybe speed my timeline up and maybe have to rush a little bit. But that's competition, and we can't control that if multiple people want to buy this business at the same time. So it's okay to ask those questions. We don't mind. Like I said earlier, I don't mind answering questions. I'd rather you ask them, but we always said, do them thoughtfully and make sure you've done your homework before you ask a stupid question too. Like, there's a little caveat there, like you said. So on that note, I think we have covered everything today. I think we gave all of you out there listening some great information and insights. If at any point you had a question about what we spoke about, you have questions how the process can work for you, you're welcome to call us, email us, reach out. We're happy to speak with you. Obviously, we do this for the encouragement of all people to be better at this process so that everybody can facilitate the deals they want. We'd love to be a part of it. If not, we totally understand too. But on that note, everyone out there have a happy Thanksgiving tomorrow. Enjoy time with your families. Put the phones down. Do not be sending leads on Thanksgiving Day, please. Spend time with your family. Be happy. Enjoy the day. And as always, we will see you next week with a brand new episode. Happy holidays out there to everybody. Y'all be safe.